Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't get over this because the Prime Minister is standing in question period today while millions of Ontarians are under lockdown again. The third wave is raging, and he's speculating about his own international travel. I guess international travel, it's not the time for that unless it's FOMO for the Prime Minister missing out on a cocktail party or some sort of photo op. The reality is that by the end of February, only 5% of Canadians had received even their first shot. That's unconscionable. Will the Prime Minister admit that if he had...
Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is Canadians have now been 25% of Canadians have received at least their first shot of the vaccines. And in the coming weeks, we're going to start getting more than 2 million vaccines every single week. And those numbers are going to keep going up. We know how important this is. On the issue of international travel, it is amazing to see the lengths to which the Conservative Party will go to make attacks. I highlighted that I was hoping to attend the G7 heads of governments meeting in June in Cornwall to work on the global recovery, but the Conservatives certainly can't have any of that.
You know what? There's a lot of Canadians who want to travel to go to funerals, to visit ailing loved ones. But they're not having any of that. And that's because the Prime Minister only delivered enough for 5% of Canadians to get their first dose of vaccine within the first 2 months of the year, that critical time when we could have stopped the first wave. He spent last summer covering up the WE scandal and shutting down Parliament instead of negotiating contracts that could have gotten us those vaccines. Will he admit that his failure to procure vaccines in January and February led to the third wave?
Mr. Speaker, again, we have now passed the threshold of having vaccinated 25% of Canadians, and we need to continue to do more, and that is something we're going to continue to do. In terms of the opportunities for the global community to come together, and particularly the leaders of the 7 largest economies, as I said, it is not certain, but I am hopeful to be able to sit with them in person, and I would do it wherever it was, whether it was in Cornwall, whether it was held in Oklahoma. I would be there to be there for the G7.
You know, the Prime Minister can mock his international travel against people who need to travel to see ailing loved ones who are separated with their families, but that's not going to cut it. He cites statistics, but one statistic is fact. Only 2% of Canadians 2% have been fully vaccinated. That's abysmal. That's not going to stop the third wave. There's not enough supply. We're having to administer first shots of vaccines off-label for 4 months because he didn't produce enough vaccines. We could have stopped the first wave if he had gotten us vaccines in January and February, but he didn't. Why?
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Conservatives demonstrate that they'll never let the facts get in the way of a good political partisan attack. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, is we have been working diligently, and indeed experts and the National Advisory Council on Immunization made a recommendation that Canada follow a one-dose strategy with a larger stretch point between the 2 doses so that we could ensure more Canadians are protected. Those decisions are grounded in science, and even the Conservative health critic has to recognize that rather than make partisan attacks.
It's just ridiculous. It's off-label. No other country is separating doses by 4 months. Only Canada, because he didn't get us enough vaccines. Fact, only 2% of Canadians are fully vaccinated. Fact, only 5% were fully vaccinated by the end of January. That's his partisan fault. Enough with the partisan games. He didn't get us these vaccines. Now we're in the third wave. Now ICUs are overflowing, and it's because he didn't negotiate these contracts. Why didn't we have enough vaccines in January and February? For shame.
Mr. Speaker, again, I don't want to tell the health critic for the Conservative Party how to do her job, but if she actually looked around, the UK was actually the first country to expand that 4-month spread strategy, and as a way of getting more people protected as quickly as possible. So that is the strategy that Canadian scientists and experts have recommended, and that is what we are continuing to do. We have now passed the threshold of 25% of Canadians vaccinated. We have millions more vaccines coming in the coming months, coming weeks and months, and we look forward to getting through this pandemic by working together.